Timma, and this is actually my first video on BookTube. I've been wanting to do this for so long, and I'm really excited to just press record and start, though it is really scary. But I decided for my first video I'm gonna do the mid-year book freakout tag so that I can share how my reading year has been going and show you what kinds of books I've been liking. Let's get started. First question of the mid-year book freakout tag is the best book you've read so far in 2020. And I could not pick just one for this question. So far this year I've read 34 books, which is maybe not that much to some of you, but it's incredible for me. Last year I thought I had a really good reading year, and I read 27 books the whole year, and I was really proud of myself. So to read 34 books so far this year is awesome. And so I can't choose just one to pick for the best book of 2020, so I went with 4. The first one I'll talk about is Don't Call Us Dead by Danez Smith. This is a poetry collection by Black non-binary author Danez Smith, and I'm actually going to link in the description a video of an interview that I saw with them where they start by performing several of the poems from this collection. And they started out as a spoken word poet, and I think hearing some of these poems out loud and performed really enhances the experience of reading really the entire collection, because you kind of get a sense of how they intended the words to be heard, you know? Like, this collection really focuses on the Black experience, but also Danez Smith's experience being HIV positive. And there are some poems where he really weaves the two together seamlessly, and it's incredibly powerful. Highlights for me in this collection were Dinosaurs in the Hood, which is just a really fun poem. You really need to hear this poem performed. I'll put the timestamps for it in the description next to the link. It's really fun, but it also points out how much we don't get to see Black people in starring roles in these kinds of movies, and it's really great. And another one of my favorite poems from the collection is Every Day is a Funeral and a Miracle. And that's one of the ones where he really weaves together the experiences of being Black and queer and HIV positive. And it's just so well done and seamless and powerful, and I really highly recommend it. The second book that I'll talk about is Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. This one is a sort of courtroom thriller, I guess, and it's about an accident that happens in this little rural town called Miracle Creek at the Miracle Submarine, which is a pressurized oxygen chamber owned by the Yu family, who were immigrants from South Korea. And they market this chamber as an experimental medical procedure to treat people with conditions like autism or infertility. One day there's a really tragic accident that happens. There's an explosion and 2 people die, one of them a child. And so in this book, we go back and forth between the events of that day and the days before it and the courtroom, because in the courtroom scenes, there's already an accused person, so that person is standing trial. And throughout the book, we're getting perspectives from everyone who was at the Miracle Submarine that day. And we're trying to figure out if the person accused is really the person who did this or if it was someone else. I haven't read a lot of thrillers recently, so it was really exciting to read. I thought it was very well paced. It's very much like Broadchurch or something like that, if any of you have seen that TV show, where this accident kind of reveals all of the dirty laundry, I guess, of everybody in this small town. because nobody is like really truly innocent, and that is what I loved about the ending of this book. This book explored so many different things. There was a lot of like really complicated conversations around autism and parenting children with autism. You really get so many perspectives, because outside the Miracle Submarine there were protesters that day who were saying that you shouldn't be trying to cure autism, while the parents are trying to figure out how best to have their children lead as normal life as possible. And beyond that, there was also a lot of conversation around the Yus and their experience being an immigrant family from South Korea, and especially between Young and Mary. Young is the mother and Mary is her daughter, and their relationship and how it's strained since coming from Korea to America because she has to work all the time. Yeah, so there was so much in this book and a lot that really stuck with me, and it was just really exciting to read. I read this so quickly. The third book I'll talk about is If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. This book was written in 1974, so it's one of the later books of Baldwin's. I believe it's also the only or one of the only books written by Baldwin told from the perspective of a female character. So this book is told from the perspective of Tish, and she and her boyfriend Fani are the couple at the center of the story. They are a young couple. She's 19 and he's like 21, I think. And they are like meant to be and have been since they were little kids. So they get engaged during the story, and then Tish finds out that she's pregnant. But before she finds out that she's pregnant, Fani actually gets falsely accused of rape and gets arrested and sent to jail. So this story is really about this couple getting through that with their love and devotion to each other, but also the love of like Tish's family and the people around them. It also explores racism in the police and legal system. Like, for example, we're shown how the police officer sort of has it out for Fani for a while, and Fani ends up being the only black man in the lineup shown to the woman. And it's so infuriating to see. And Baldwin writes everything just so well. Like, the writing in this book was by far my favorite thing about it. I'm just like totally obsessed with it. These are a couple of lines that I'll share. I don't know either of us very well. What would both of us be like? And then there's another quote about time. It says, time, the word tolled like the bells of a church. Fani was doing time. In 6 months' time, our baby would be here. Somewhere in time, Fani and I had met. Somewhere in time, we had loved. Somewhere no longer in time, but now totally at time's mercy, we loved. Oh, it's so good. This is the first James Baldwin book that I've read, and I'm very, very excited to read more of his work. And the fourth book I'll talk about is the one I just finished like 2 days ago. It's called The Power of Ritual, and it actually came out just a couple weeks ago, I think. But it's written by Casper ter Kuile, who is the co-host of my favorite podcast, Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. And in this book, he explores the ideas of ritual and community in non-religious spaces, and offers recommendations about how to incorporate some of these practices into our daily lives. He takes inspiration from traditions that show up in many different ancient religions and cultures. So for example, like taking a Sabbath day every week, making pilgrimages out of your trips and your walks in order to connect better with nature. In this book, he really emphasizes how a lot of the things that we already do every day can be made into rituals that give us more meaning in our lives. And really, like, the three things that like make up a ritual are intention, attention, and repetition. And so he's like, if you apply these principles to something that already means a lot to you, and you continue to do that, you can really create a meaningful experience for yourself. This book is kind of exactly what I've been looking for a really long time. I've been trying to incorporate like more ritual into my daily life. This book also really inspired me to take a look at the rituals that I grew up with. Like I'm Hindu, so I grew up with a lot of Hindu religious traditions. So I haven't really been like practicing very much recently, but I feel like very inspired to really look at the rituals and traditions and what they mean and bring them back into my life in a way that makes sense to me and brings me a lot of meaning and brings me closer to myself, other people, and the world around me. All right, so those are the best books of 2020, and that's the majority of this video. The second question is the best sequel that I read in 2020. The best sequel I read was definitely the one that was new to me, which was The Two Towers, so the sequel in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But The Two Towers was really great. Like, I really enjoyed it more than The Fellowship of the Ring, especially the end. The end of Two Towers was incredible. All right, the third question is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. So Book Riot just came out with a list of the best books of 2020 so far, and I just kind of scrolled through and read a lot of these descriptions, and there's so many of them that I want to read. A couple that really stood out to me were The Yield, which is an Australian book that celebrates the reclamation of Indigenous language and culture. And reclaiming language and learning more about language is something that really speaks to me. I am someone who is like sort of bilingual. The second language I speak is Telugu, which is a South Indian language, but I don't really speak it very well, and I can read it, but very slowly, not enough to read like literature in that language, and that has always been a huge source of regret and disappointment for me. And it's really easy in this like really kind of cruel globalization of the world that has announced that the languages with the most speakers are by far the most valuable, like English and Spanish, and a lot of these languages that originated from European colonizers are more valuable than like indigenous languages or really like local regional languages. And so I think it's really, really important to take a look at those too. And so I'm really interested in reading about how they approach reclamation. The other book that I was really excited about is a children's or like middle grade book called Ghost Squad. So the description for this book on Book Riot says, shout out to Claribel Ortega for writing a funny, charming, and sweet ghost adventure with two smart brown girls, Lucy and Sid, and a badass grandma at the center. She manages to center the ancestral knowledge of Latinx and Black communities, our deep connection with spirits and ancestors, in a way that makes this book sing. And doesn't that make you want to read it? I'm so excited to read this book. The fourth question is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And that is definitely The Shadow of Kyoshi. I read The Rise of Kyoshi earlier this year, and rewatching, rereading everything. I've been rereading the comics, and I just finished The Search, which is, it's really good. It's really good. So the Rise of Kyoshi was about Avatar Kyoshi and how she became the Avatar. And the premise of that book is just, it's so good. It's also really dark. It goes like, Avatar The Last Airbender could get pretty dark, but this one really went places that I think even Avatar wouldn't have gone to, and it was just, it was so cool. So I'm really, really excited to read that sequel. Number 5 is the biggest disappointment this year. This is kind of sad, but I actually haven't finished this book yet. I started it like 2 months ago, and it's like a middle grade book, and I still haven't finished it. And it is Aru Shah and the End of Time by Roshani Chokshi. I really wanted to love this book, and maybe I will when I finish it. I'm just like taking my time because I'm not really enjoying it right now. But I had just reread Percy Jackson and the Olympians earlier this year, And this is part of the series that Rick Riordan has, where he kind of uplifts and gives a platform to like authors of color, and allows them to tell stories kind of in the same sort of format as Percy Jackson, but from their own cultural backgrounds. And so Aru Shah is a story of this Indian American girl, and her mom works in like a museum of Indian history, and so there are a lot of religious artifacts there, and so the world of like Hindu mythology comes to life, and so she goes on this like grand adventure in it. And I wanted to love it so much. I really think I would have loved this book if I had been in the demographic for it. Like if I was 10, I really think I would love this book. And it made me realize that maybe if I read the Percy Jackson series now for the first time, I don't think I would like it as much as I do. There's a lot of nostalgia that makes me love that series. And I wish I had that for this book, because the problem for me was that it was so much like Percy Jackson in its structure and its humor, and when that was presented to me with like a new story with new people, and it just really didn't connect with me. So I'm very sad about that, especially because like I'm Hindu, and like these are stories that I'm familiar with, and some of the scenes were like really cool to see some of it come to life, but a lot of it, I don't know, like the way it's presented, I didn't feel like respectful enough or something, because I don't know, it's hard for me to articulate why I didn't connect with this book, but I just really didn't. All right, 6 is the biggest surprise of the year, and this one I'm gonna give to Jurassic Park. So I read Jurassic Park. I love the movie Jurassic Park. It's incredible, and it still holds up. Like, I would highly recommend rewatching it if you haven't in a while. The effects are great. The story is great. It leaves you really, really tense. It's a really good movie. And I had never read the book, but Murphy, one of my favorite booktubers, read it earlier this year, and when she read it, she said it had become one of her new favorites of all time, and so I was like, all right, I have to read this. I also don't read a lot of science fiction, and I really want to change that, because it seems like it should be right up my alley. And it was great. Jurassic Park was amazing. I highly recommend reading it. It's so fun. There's so much more action than they can fit into the movie. I'm really glad I read it. It was really fun. All right, favorite new author, either a debut author or new to you. This will be James Baldwin for sure. Like I said, I absolutely loved his writing in If Beale Street Could Talk, and I'm very, very excited to read more of his work. Newest fictional crush. I don't have one. I didn't really read any book that made me crush on a character. Yeah, so I don't have an answer for this. Newest favorite character, Samwise Gamgee. He's so good. Oh, he's so good. Book that made you happy. Oh, I did a lot of rereads this year, so rereading like Percy Jackson and Hunger Games made me really happy, because, you know, they're just like really fun books. But I also read the graphic novel Sheets, a recommendation from Ariel Bassett, another one of my favorite booktubers, and it was just so cute. The second to last question is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. So I've only bought one physical book this year, and that is Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat by Samin Nosrat. Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat is also a show on Netflix that she did. It's like 4 episodes, one for each thing, and that's also really, really good. But this is a great cookbook, and as you can see, I've marked the hell out of it, so I can try out all of these different recipes and look at all of the great advice that she has to give. All right, the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? this is an insane question. I have so many books on my list to read that I couldn't possibly go through all of them. But I'm making a reading rush TBR soon, so you'll get to see some of the books that I'm trying to read. And yeah, so many. There's so many books I need to read by the end of the year. Obviously, The Shadow of Kyoshi and The Return of the King are top of my list. I'm currently listening to All Boys Aren't Blue. So check out my future videos for what books I'm going to read for the rest of the year. And hopefully more fun stuff. This is really fun. I've been wanting to do BookTube for a really long time, and I'm really excited to keep making videos. I will be starting medical school like really soon, like in a month. So this was probably the worst time to start a BookTube channel, but I'm trying to film a lot this month before school starts so that I'll have videos up for a little bit. And I'm just really excited to film and to talk about books. So hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.